My name is Dina. Currently, my eldest son, Nick, has proposed that we live together. And I am pondering whether to accept his offer. I had been living in an old wooden apartment building. This is because, a month ago, while I was out, a landslide occurred, causing my ancestral home, where I had lived with my husband for many years, to collapse to the extent that it became uninhabitable. Fortunately, nothing of value was buried, but since it became impossible to live there, I decided to rent an apartment for a while. The landlord of the apartment, an acquaintance of mine, upon hearing about my situation, offered. It must have been tough. Right now, a room in my apartment is vacant. Would you like to come and stay? Of course, I am paying rent. For the time being, I will be living in an apartment. But this incident made me consider demolishing the house I lived in with my husband and rebuilding a new one. That's when my eldest son, Nick, came to see me. My second son, who is in an international marriage and does not live in the US, came to the US immediately upon hearing from me to ensure my safety. And after buying new furniture for me, he quickly returned to his wife's country. On the other hand, my eldest son, Nick, lightly brushed off the fact that the house he was born and raised in was half buried by a landslide, saying, that must have been tough. But well, it's good that you weren't home when the landslide happened. I had always thought he was not good at empathizing with others, but I never imagined it to this extent. Nevertheless, he seems to be doing well in society, with a wife and 3 lively children. Well, originally, he didn't intend to have 3 children, but when energetic triplets were born, he became the father of 3 children overnight. Supporting such a family, perhaps the nest he left behind no longer mattered to him. I decided to think that way. I can live perfectly well on my own, so I was not worried. Then, suddenly, Nick came to me and proposed, why don't we live together? When I heard that the house was in dire straits, he never mentioned such a thing before. So I wondered what this was all about. Still, I was taken by Nick to his and his wife Stacy's house, where they live with their triplets, Ian, Ryan, and Sean. Upon arriving at their house, I immediately understood why Nick had proposed that we live together. The house was in a state of disarray. The triplets are very lively, but Stacy says she is too tired from parenting to do any housework. As a result, Nick does not do any housework either, so no one cleans the house. And it just becomes more and more neglected. Seeing this, I thought I could at least help Stacy, who is suffering from parenting fatigue, and decided to live with them. As soon as I started cleaning, Stacy said, "Oh, thank you, Mother," and locked herself in her only clean room. Wondering what she was doing, I heard laughter and talking as I passed by her room. So she must be talking to someone. I decided to think that she is just tired for now, and continued cleaning the house of my eldest son and his wife and taking care of the triplets. The triplets are full of energy, but they seem to understand common sense well. When I explain why something is not allowed, they quickly understand. Seeing me clean and cook every day, they started to pat my shoulder and say, "Grandma, thank you for your hard work today." I felt happy that such kind children appreciated my efforts. I have repeatedly told Nick, you should help with the housework, but he says, I'm providing for Stacy. Since Stacy is a full-time housewife, this situation shouldn't be happening. You were a full-time housewife too, so you understand, right? I only raised 1 child at a time. And it was 3 years after Nick was born that my second son was born. I never raised 3 children at once, and when I had children, my relatives all helped with the childcare. So it was easier than what Stacy is experiencing now. Even though modern times offer many gadgets that help with childcare, having many hands is still better. If he knows something is wrong with his wife, he should not rely on his mother but solve it himself. I sighed, realizing Nick would not take initiative. I never imagined my son would cause such trouble for someone else. At that moment, I felt deeply apologetic towards Stacy. However, an event so shocking occurred afterward that it completely overshadowed any feelings of guilt I had. Despite living with Stacy, Nick, and the triplets, and taking on the household chores, I still hand over the monthly living expenses to Nick. I'm not being paid as a maid, so I'm free to do as I please. As long as I don't neglect the housework entirely, I'm free to leave the house and engage in activities I want or need to do. However, I unexpectedly ran into Stacy during one of these times. This happened while I was discussing plans for a new house with an acquaintance who is an architectural designer. Since he and I knew each other from my college days, we took the opportunity to catch up and reminisce about old times while discussing the new house. Just then, as he went to pick some flowers, Stacy approached and said, "Mother, what a coincidence to see you here." I was startled and turned to see Stacy standing there. She asked, "Is this man your boyfriend or something?" Confused, I replied, "No. He's an old acquaintance from my student days, now working as an architectural designer." Stacy seemed to accept this, nodding with a "I see." Then, with a sly grin, she said, "Seeing me here must be your bad luck," and left. Confused about what she meant by bad luck, I was left puzzled. When the designer returned, we continued our conversation about the new house. Little did I know, Stacy had overheard our conversation about the new house and was plotting to take it over. Before I could ponder the meaning of Stacy's words, it was revealed that she was pregnant. Considering she was already neglecting household chores due to exhaustion from taking care of 3 children, I couldn't understand why they would want more. Moreover, she was expecting twins. Despite my disbelief at their lack of planning, I couldn't help but question Nick and Stacy's judgment. With the care of the existing 3 children largely falling on me, I wondered why they would want to add more to the family. I sighed in disbelief. Eventually, the lively twin girls were born, and from their pregnancy to their birth, the responsibility for the house and childcare fell to me. I thought to myself that living alone was far easier than this. Amidst these thoughts, I noticed Stacy packing her belongings into cardboard boxes. "Stacy, are you planning to declutter or something?" With 2 more babies, having fewer belongings seemed logical. I offered to help, thinking she intended to declutter, but she just laughed. "Can't you see? I'm preparing to move." "Move? Where to?" "To the new house you were discussing with the architectural designer, of course. I won't allow you to live in a new single-family home by yourself." "Whose money do you think is paying for that?" "Excuse me?" I couldn't comprehend her logic. Indeed, I plan to build a new house on the site of my former home. However, I intended to live there alone, not with Stacy. And certainly not with Nick and 5 grandchildren who do nothing. Yet, why did she assume she would live with me, and moreover, that I was using money that wasn't mine to build the house? The money you have belongs to your husband, right? Then, that money should naturally go to Nick, the eldest son, shouldn't it? If you weren't here, all of it would have gone to Nick. You must have been greedy and taken it all for yourself? Such facts do not exist. And being suddenly confronted with talk of inheritance made me feel terrible. I wish she would stop making it sound like she wishes I weren't here. What are you talking about? Please stop making baseless accusations. You have no right to speak about inheritance. Despite my response, Stacy remained convinced she was right, insisting, "No. If Dina is building a new house, then it belongs to Nick, the eldest son. So, we will live there. You have been selfishly using my father-in-law's inheritance. And since you've moved in and been living off Nick, you have no right to complain. What is this girl talking about? How I use the money I received is my business. And she has no right to criticize or reprimand me for it. First of all, moving in. It was Nick who suggested, "Why don't you live here?" And I'm living in this house to do household chores and take care of the children. Moreover, I'm not being supported by Nick. On top of paying living expenses every month, I'm also doing all the housework and childcare, unlike Stacy, who leaves everything to me and goes out to enjoy herself. Oh, if you're planning to live together in the new house, you'll have to contribute financially to the household. It would be troublesome if you suddenly went out to play like before. I'll make you a servant. Then it's okay for you to live in our house. Hearing her say this with a smirk, I realized any guilt I initially felt towards her completely vanished. The thought crossed my mind that maybe I should just demolish it. The new house is not yet completed. It's only framed, so let's demolish it. I certainly don't want Stacy and Nick rolling into a house I built and own in my name. I quickly packed my belongings. Nick, for some reason, thought he would be moving into the new house under my name, and was packing with the children. However, our destinations are different. Next month, we'll say goodbye to this house. Someone's already bought it, so all that's left is to move out, Stacy said, while I briskly carried my belongings and left the house. Once I was gone, the absence of someone to cook was immediately noticeable, and I received numerous calls from Stacy and Nick. However, they seemed to think I had just gone out on a whim that day, and the calls soon stopped. But when the situation continued for several days, and it came to the day Stacy and Nick had decided to move, I woke up to 50 missed calls. While I was looking at the history, calls from Stacy and Nick kept coming. I was astounded. If they had properly looked for me when I disappeared, they wouldn't be panicking now. I decided to answer the phone just once. "What's going on, Mother? There's supposed to be a new single-family home here. There's nothing here? The framework was even completed last time? Did you do something? This house belongs to Nick." Hearing Stacy start on this, I couldn't help but laugh. I couldn't stop laughing if I continued talking to her, so I hung up without replying. Looking back, Stacy must have been frantic, seeking explanations from me, only to be laughed at and hung up on. Even so, I no longer feel sorry. When I answered Nick's call, he was also frantic. "Why is there no house? There was supposed to be a house here where we grew up. Your childhood home was destroyed by a landslide a while ago. What have you been listening to all this time?" I sighed. "Stacy said she had talked with you, and we had agreed to move into the house you built with Father's inheritance. I packed everything and left our home for this. How could you do this to us? Are you even my parent?" "So," I cheerfully said, "you took your wife's word for it without confirming with me? Silly. Well, if that's what you say, I was planning to disown you anyway. Let's not contact each other from now on." And hung up. After that, I canceled my smartphone contract, ensuring they could never contact me again. Only people who are aware of the situation know my new smartphone contact, so Nick and Stacy won't find out. I heard through the grapevine that they were desperately looking for me. Surely, they're struggling without someone to take care of the house and children and contribute financially. When I heard from an acquaintance that Nick and Stacy had found my current address, I hurriedly took refuge in a friend's house. I left a large envelope in the mailbox of my current address, addressed to Nick and Stacy. It seems Stacy made an angry call to my brother, who had been keeping an eye on them. That's understandable. Inside the envelope I left in the postbox were proofs of Stacy's long affair, and the diagnostic results showing the twin girls were not Nick's children. I had been aware of Stacy's affair for quite some time. When I was talking with an architectural designer at a cafe, Stacy was there meeting with her lover. After she hastily left the cafe with the unknown man, I hired a detective agency to investigate her. The investigation revealed her affair, and I also conducted a DNA test on the triplets. The triplets were indeed Nick and Stacy's children, but the father of the twin girls was not Nick. By now, Stacy and Nick must be in a terrible mess. I also sent the evidence of the affair and the DNA test results to the lover's home. Turns out, the lover was married too, so he might face a lawsuit for damages from his wife. Nick will probably demand compensation from Stacy. They're in a tight spot. If they have time to desperately search for me, they better sort out their own mess first. Stacy, crying, contacted my brother, saying, "You know where mother-in-law is, right? Tell me. My life is ruined because of her. Without her, there's no one to do the childcare or housework. We don't have money, we don't have a home, and it's been tough. On top of that, I can't handle the lawsuit for the affair. It's all mother-in-law's fault. She has to fix everything. Essentially, Stacy should be the one doing the housework and childcare. If she thought it was hard, she should have thought twice about having children. Living without thinking ahead leads to such consequences. Moreover, the affair is entirely Stacy's fault, so it's wrong for her to demand I take responsibility." My brother, who dislikes dishonesty, retorted, "You got what you deserved. Don't try to make others pay for your sins. Fool." After that, I heard Stacy stopped looking for me. Nick was lectured for hours over a video call by his son living abroad. Bro, at your age, instead of helping mom, you're trying to be helped by her. How lame is that? Since then, Nick has stopped asking for my help too. However, Nick and Stacy are discussing divorce. And considering neither seemed capable of parenting, a couple in our relatives who were struggling with infertility adopted the triplets. The twins were taken in by the lover and his wife, who chose to rebuild their marriage. It seems their issue was the inability to have children. And adopting the twins brought recovery from their despair. Initially, I was worried, but now the husband and wife are happily raising the twins together, without pursuing compensation. The only one who ended up in ruin is Stacy, who now has to pay for the upbringing of 5 children. Got divorced, and works from dawn till dusk in a live-in job, struggling with the payments. Once things settle down, I plan to build a new house as my final home.